All right, John Schram, thank you for joining the Mental Golf Show. I'm going to start us off with a short but sweet question. What is clutch?
Clutch is defined as a high arousal ability to understand that there's a closed goal orientation. There's pass fail, right? Individuals that are clutch, we always talk about the fact that Sports Center top 10. You'll
Right.
hear an announcer say clutch, 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 right? In the empirical literature, in the literature, they call it clutch. And so it's a highly aroused state. It's where we're not just sitting here talking. We're not bored in class. We're not bored at work. There's something different about this state. And also, it's more or less an ability to say, hey, I understand that there's a clear yes, no. Make the putt, miss the putt. Really, in golf, it's tough to apply it outside of Friday afternoon, trying to make a cut, trying to make a short putt that may be a high expectation, have to make it. But individuals that can understand that situation and thrive in it, that's how I define clutch.
Mm. So there has to be a need. Like
Mhm.
if I don't make this, then something bad happens. Is that a decent way to frame it?
I would say it is a decent way to frame it. I think for the most part, this is a just clear yes, no, where
Right.
if I can hit one 320 down the left side or 290 down the left side, it's kind of a subjective gain, right? And obviously we see with shots gained with Mark Brody that is quantified now. But it really at the end of the day is more or less, okay, um, did I rise to the occasion or did I not? And we see that so clearly defined in so many other sports, where golf, we see kind of this shifting, right? If you're on tour Thursday afternoon, Thursday morning, you're just trying to go as low as you possibly can. It's a very flowy, that's under the definition of what flow would be, where we're just trying to hit the best shot we possibly can in this moment. And there's a few moments where in clutch, Friday afternoon, maybe Sunday afternoon, I don't know, maybe Saturday at some point late in the season of FedEx Cup, points do matter, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but really, at the game of golf, you kind of choose your own adventure. You could frame it either or. There's a pass fail of hitting the green, there's a pass fail of hitting the fairway. But what I've found in a few interviews, as far as with professionals, they tend to push back on clutch because they're so infatuated with their system, right? They evaluate success on their routine. They evaluate success on their pre-shot cognition. They
Yeah.
evaluate success on did we check the boxes and did we theoretically get the right number? And that's really it. It's not even did I hit the right number? Because, at that level, they could hit the TrackMan 148 that they needed, and it didn't turn out to be perfect.
Right.
So I will say this. I think in my limited interviewing that I've done, it seems 90-10. It feels like 90% of the individuals that I've talked to are so focused on trying to find the flow of what's the best I can do here, the positive psychology play, as opposed to, 10% of them, they're like, man, I love when I know it. I love when I need this, right? And definitely don't quote me on this, but Nicholas certainly talked about one of the opens, and forgive me, I think he was in the 60s or maybe early 70s, where he did take a look at the leaderboard with about four to play. I believe he had a four-shot lead, and he limped in to win by one. And I
Mm.
think he did. He was pretty public of like, I don't deserve that one, right? It's kind of like Arnold Palmer shaking a hand or at least accepting congratulations walking up 18 at Augusta that one year when he had, I think, a two-shot lead coming in and he tripled the last. He keeps
Mm.
on talking about it. Should never have shaken that hand.
Hmm.
Should never accepted that congratulations. Because I do believe that even in the game's greats, whether they're in that 90 or that 10, they're very oftentimes very present and focused on what's the best I can do today or what's the best I can do in this moment. Don't mean to keep going on this, but I
Yeah,
would
bring
I
it.
would say if we went out and played your home course, I would have no I would not be surprised one bit if you hit one down the center, 290, 310. Would be not be surprised one bit if you hit that wedge to about 6 feet. I'd not be surprised one bit if you made that 6 footer. Now, if you did
That
that for
sounds
three or
nice.
four, yeah, it does sound nice, right? I wouldn't be surprised if you did that three more holes, four
Hmm.
more holes. You take it to 4 or 5 under through six or something. I wouldn't really be surprised. But if you just kept on doing that,
Mm.
that's where it gets pretty dang special. So in
Mm.
the moment, I always challenge individuals, you have the ability to hit a tour quality shot. It's just taking yourself there and understanding that each shot has got that kind of potential.
Yeah. Okay. So is it obviously it's all perception, right? This the a birdie putt is a birdie putt, or a putt is a putt, a 6 footer is a 6 footer, but all of a sudden the circumstances around it, the context, the before, what this could mean for my future,
Mhm.
that is what turns it into a potential clutch scenario. So then is is it helpful to think in a binary way like that? Is it helpful to to adopt the clutch mentality?
Mhm.
Obviously, you're saying most pros don't, they steer away from that language, maybe
Mhm.
because they feel like that's too binary, that's unhelpful.
Mhm.
But is does the concept of I need to like this, it's do or die, maybe not do or die, that could be unhelpful, I imagine, but it's make or miss. Here it
Mhm.
is. This is my chance.
Yeah.
Is that a helpful place to be?
So it all depends on the own personal profile or more or less personality that you bring to this. It's your preference, right? What I will say, and the reason that I do believe I'm seeing 90-10 is that professionalism is consistency. Professionalism is relentlessly showing up day in and day out with the same skill set that you have today. I work with executives, founders, and even a few poker players. And when I understand professionalism in those contexts, I see relentless consistency. So to answer your question, if you have moments in your past, you understand that you're a really good match player. Usually, match play, you're very well aware of the clutchedness of.
Mm.
You could feel that on the first hole. You understand that this 4.5 footer that's a little slidey, a little quick. You need to make this to essentially keep the match even, right?
Mm.
Um, so I think it's all about understanding yourself and understanding okay, what do I actually care about? What does my performance look like in those contexts? Where does my mind actually go there? And the reason I think I've found it 90-10 with these professionals is more or less, okay, they're doing this every day.
Yeah.
And I it just when you talk to college players that are really excited about getting out there, might be nervy for this moment, might be nervy for this event, I always say it's just like, hey, if you go out and try, you go out and try to make it through Q school and a couple of these different tours, you go out and play your mini tour events. Do you realize how many opportunities you're going to have? You
Mm.
realize how many days you're going to basically have the warm up and go out and do it? It's north of 100. It's
Yeah.
maybe less than 200, but that's going to be a full year. There's
Mm.
opportunity everywhere. So when I get to talk with individuals that do have status on maybe some like DP Challenge or Corn Ferry, these individuals have a lot of golf to play.
Mm.
And I think the pure repetition and the experience begins to draw that in. Not to discount the fact that I think there is 10, maybe 20% of individuals that when they do have a 7 footer to make the cut and they know it, they're pretty dang good, right?
Yeah. It locks
Um,
them in.
so I think at that level, those individuals have figured out what their relationship with closed or open goal orientation is.
Right. And I imagine if, and I know this from experience, you know this from experience, when it is so routine, when golf is so routine, when it's seen as this is just another putt in this long stream of my journey of golf, when you kind of say, when you take that view personally helped me a lot, right? It was, I'm going to show up the same every time, no matter what this is for.
Uh,
If I started to catch myself overvaluing make or miss the result in general, then I started to struggle. I
uh,
would take myself back. I would remind myself, whoa, 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 zoom out, right? This is that you're getting too individualistic about this shot. There's a bigger picture here.
uh,
Don't get so bent out of shape about this one. So I lean towards the clutch is unhelpful, or the concept of make or miss is unhelpful. And I don't know, I'm just for you personally. I mean, how do you think about the kind of overall improvement journey, or no, this like everything rests on this one, falls on this one. There's no there's no future, there's no past. I don't
Mhm.
know. How do you where do you fall on all that?
So I've always felt, and I feel that the numbers are probably not correct, but I think it's a good illustration. When the lights turn on, you're either 15% better or 15% worse. I'll,
Mm,
I'll make an argument that if you went deep into flow, the state that I've been studying for a while, it might even be more than that, right?
yeah.
We do turn into, I always like to say that it's kind of like a Superman turning on. The structure of that is more or less the prefrontal shutting down. You have the same energy budget for the brain. Therefore, you have a little bit more power going to everything else, a little bit more ability. Now,
Mm,
we've always, yeah, I think what's happened here is viewing golf back in the 60s, 70s, 80s in, more or less Arnold Palmer on the tee. Like that was it. That was as far as the commentary, that was really it. But now we are exposed to what is an entertainment product,
right.
right? So if you and me could teleport inside the ropes to see every single swing of Scotty at Harbor Town, we would probably see just some consistent,
Yeah.
opportunities that if we were watching PJ Tour Live, we were watching CBS on Sunday, there's going to be a lot of artistic quality in, okay,
Yeah.
well, he's got this, he's probably thinking this, he's probably thinking that. And I'm like, well, I don't have a ton of experience playing with anybody at the in the big leagues, but I have kind of touched it a little bit. When you when you're out there and when you're playing well, there's a lot of what's mentioned by the booth that just is like, no,
Yeah.
no, we're trying to sell a product that is a very interesting storyline,
Yeah, more
right?
dramatic.
I think, at the end of the day, the Masters that we had this year was just
Mm,
as good as it could ever be. But for a psych-minded individual, and I know for yourself as well, to watch this was okay. Whenever Rory had more or less a window on seven, when Rory had a rather difficult approach on 17, the two tee shots he hit on 18, when the skill or the skill needed is very high, the execution matched, and it was amazing.
yes.
But that little pitch on 13, um, I'd say kind of how he played 11 throughout the week. When there is a simple shot, we tend to kind of open the window of I don't have to be as tight. It's not that
Mm,
he's thinking I don't have to be as tight, but yeah, most of golf can hit a 30-yard pitch within a 10, 12 pace window. And, body shuts down and he knows that his miss is a little right anyway. And you know, I did see a lot of fairly simple shots that were shockingly
mm,
kind of open, but at the same time, he would just turn right around and hit a beautiful approach in the 16,
yeah.
stick it to what, 2 feet. I know Lou Stagner had a tweet out there as far as like the probabilities of those three shots in a row.
Right.
Disgusting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
to me, it can make perfect sense that we can see both of those qualities of those shots in that round. But I think to many other people, it just kind of like, how do you hit that shot on 15? And then how do you actually hit that shot on 13?
Right.
Or vice versa. But yeah, it's it was a treat to watch that because there is so much built there where Augusta does line up with Rory's abilities. It should theoretically be a really good golf course for him.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always thought that there's three contexts in which you can play. You can play the shot, you can play the situation, you can play the course.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe 99% of great professional golf is played just playing the shot.
Right.
And for some reason, this mystique of the property, this mystique of this tournament, I do feel that the world's very best tend to play the course or maybe tend to play the situation sometimes.
Mm.
But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea of clutch, and I know we're beating the clutch horse to death, but the the idea of clutch sounds like, well, I'm playing the situation, right? That's me bringing, allowing all this context to inform what
Uh-huh.
this means.
Uh-huh.
And You know, you can see in Rory's final round how that it comes and goes, as that was helpful at times and that was hurtful at times, where on 13 it's really it's like he didn't make it binary enough, right? I have to just hit the screen. It was, I mean, obviously we are total speculation. I've
Yeah,
had
yeah, yeah.
multiple conversations, or a bunch of conversations, since that Masters, and every one of them is just us speculating.
Yeah.
But the idea of this could go a million different places because it's so easy. So am I trying to get aggressive here because, man, this, I got a perfect angle.
Uh,
It's so easy. Like, this is
uh,
bread and butter.
uh,
So am I trying to be aggressive, or am I trying to just get it on the green?
uh,
And so it's almost like he made it not binary enough. But then come around to 15, it's like, I have to do this, right?
yeah.
If I don't do this, then I'm letting this master slip. So it became binary, and I project onto this, but 15, 16, 17, where he hit those iron shots so good, those, it's like he brought the binariness to it,
Uh-huh.
and it helped him. It elevated his game.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you've showed me a graph before where it's the
Mm.
flow graph, where there's boredom on one side and anxiety on the other side, and then there's the
Uh,
flow channel in the middle.
yes. Yeah.
So, and I can hear you kind of alluding to this, like Rory on 13, that wedge shot into the green, that was in the boredom category. Maybe it didn't engage him enough.
Uh-huh.
But then there's, um, I think we look at that and say, no, that was the anxiety one, right? He hit a terrible shot because he's
Uh-huh.
not clutch, right? He can't
Yeah.
he can't pull it out. So I don't know where I'm wondering with this, but I guess what I'm trying to pull out is, for us kind of regular amateurs from you know +2 to 25 handicap, 30 handicap,
Mm.
us in there, right? We're
Uh,
talking about the best players in the world. For us, all the other golfers, the 99% of golfers, is that something that we should aspire to make it more binary? How can we find the balance between boredom and anxiety? Should we make things as boring as possible? Because that's kind of the method I've always taken, is it just needs to be boring, consistent,
yeah.
never get engaged, because if I'm too engaged, or if I'm engaged at all, like if I'm leaving my process. So I don't know, where should we all, or how can we find the flow channel?
So the game of golf, in my opinion, is a series of individual action. Okay.
Right.
In other sport, it's very tough for us to say individual action. But golf, we get a nice little 15-minute chat in before we have to make our next swing.
Mm-hmm.
I always like to say, if you can ask this one question of yourself, was that action a pursuit of something good, or was that action an avoidance of something bad?
Right.
And it's very rare that we see that vi on full display at the very highest levels of the game, right? Because that little pitch on 13 was not a pursuit of something good.
Right.
That hook on 15, you don't have the choice. Like
Yeah.
it's only pursuit,
It's only
right?
pursuit.
And I think if you're talking to a college player, you're talking to somebody that has some HG experience, it might sound a little odd, but I do feel like if we have hazard, OB, left and right, generally a really good player is going to make a good swing because he knows he can make a committed swing. Because he knows if there's no commitment, both left and right could be theoretically in play. But you remove one of those sides, you create a great bailout, right? It might be a little guidey.
Mm.
That
Huh.
intention might be I'm trying to avoid whatever that hazard is, right. And I think at the end of the day, the subconscious, we've invested so much time into what this game is, tens of thousands of hours. I mean, many individuals that are 12 handicaps have been playing for decades, right?
Yeah.
They know how to swing. They know how to hit the ball. But the essence of the thought, if it's do not go there, our
Mm.
subconscious doesn't really have the ability to understand negatives. It only
Mm.
understands the essence of there, right?
Right.
think of a Cape par four, right? Where you have a ton of trouble right. Do not go right. Do not go right. Do not go right.
Mm.
And then for some reason, that ball just finds the exact edge of that hazard.
Hmm.
Very rarely is it pumped 40 yards right, just in the center of the hazard. It's
Right.
kind of close, right? So it always is, it's a treat for me to get to watch these guys kind of struggle at Sawgrass when it gets pretty crazy. I think Augusta always brings out that 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 choose your own adventure of am I going to pursue something good or am I going to try to avoid something bad?
Mm. Yeah. Here's a quote from your Substack, which is really good. By the way, everyone should
Thank you.
we'll link it. Check out John's Substack. But we play an imperfect game in imperfect air, hitting an imperfect ball on an imperfect surface. So, what about that quote? Um, should that help us, or should that drive anxiety? And oh my gosh, I have zero control here. How should we uh, process that kind of thought about all the imperfections?
You know, I always speak with whether they're founders or managers, directors, executives of smaller companies or big companies. I always say be relentless with what you can control and in completely accepting of what you can't. And in golf, we have this set 10 to 40 seconds of you can do whatever you want to get ready for this shot, right? I'd say, okay, well, let's be relentless with that because even at the highest levels, I understand that most of these guys are absolutely insane at being able to hit their number, right? But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that number is not right, right? A good friend of mine was over in India and, it took him a good 6 or 7 holes to understand that the heat was playing six. Like it was a full 6 paces of heat that we had to consider,
Wow.
right? He was hitting his numbers, but we weren't hitting our numbers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think there's tremendous amounts of value from which, like a process where you more or less, is the physical routine of the pre-shot good? Is the pre-shot cognition, is that last thought pursuing something good or avoiding something bad? To me, I think if you're an amateur that's a 20 handicap all the way down to a plus two, three, four, I think that's all we can actually grade ourselves on,
Right.
right? And in that moment, I think if there's good pre-shot cognition, the ritual is consistent, there is relative confidence associated with this one shot, I think that's all we can really tell ourselves, okay, that's all I can do, right? At the end of the day, individuals who've played a lot of tournament golf, or at least individuals who've been playing for a couple decades, I don't care what handicap you are, you understand that you can make what feels like a right move. You can hit a really good shot, but until that ball is silent and not moving, either in the hole or near it, anything can happen,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
I think that bakes in a great level of acceptance as you move forward because this is one of the most precise games that you can play. And I think the sheer challenge of it makes it so addicting. But the sheer challenge of it often takes us away from how we really should think, how we
Mm.
would think about other things that are very simple, right? If we were sitting in the same room, little red rubber ball, I toss it to you, you catch it, and you throw it back. I always like to ask, what was the mental quality? What was the conscious quality of thought associated with me tossing that at you and you tossing it back? I'm like, this is a very fine kind of movement. Like this isn't exactly given, right? Driving a car. That's a skill set that when you're 15 or 16, when you first get that permit, you are white knuckling it
Mm.
and anything can go wrong. But now you try to send a text, look at the map, get a social media update, and talk to two other people on the phone. I mean, but you can do it,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
I do believe that um, when you look into your best performances in the context of if you're a 20 handicap or you're plus five, what does the absolute best, what does the peak look like for you? And try to analyze the kind of mental quality or maybe even mental clarity. That was simple. Okay, well let's try to pursue that.
Mm. Yeah, find the simplicity for yourself. Yeah, I like to think of it, all those imperfection type of things. That's like the big picture view that you have kind of going into a round of golf, or your perspective on golf. But once you get into the action,
Hmm.
you you kind of strip away all these things you can't control. And but in the back of your mind, you've got this game is hard, so it's okay. Like that kind of underlying forgiveness, the foundation of, you know what, I'm going to try my best in this shot, and
Uh,
if it goes where I want, awesome.
uh,
Like a lot of things had to line up to do that, but I'm good. So of course it did. But if I miss it, it's cool. Like you did what you could.
uh.
You practiced, you worked hard, you did what you could, you let it rip, and where it ended up is where it ended up. So you bring that kind of ethos of forgiveness because of all these imperfections.
uh.
Is that a fair way to put it?
I think if you're looking at it from a positive psychology context or from that view, it's the only way we can do it
Mm-hmm.
because it is that challenging. It
Mm,
really is. So I,
mm,
I think if you're struggling with confidence, I would automatically go to ask you, okay, how do you evaluate what failure or success looks like? And also, are you actually being fair with it? Because I
right.
know that the way that memory can work with emotion, the more violent the emotion associated with the memory, the longer it's going to stick. Oftentimes, there's not a lot of emotion associated with great shots, unless you canned one for your first hole in one or something like that, you win your first tournament, etc. Those memories, there's a lot of negative memories that are present because of the emotion attached.
Mm,
And I think the greatest error or the gravest error you can make is a high single digit is come to expect that tight little draw that you hit with your 7 iron to the center of the green. Because the it's still a very hard task. You still have something that you've trained that most people can't do, but you kind of can fall into this trap of saying, no, I expect that. I expect that. And
yeah.
anything less than that's not good, right? And that's programming a system that is going to be perpetually negative, right? It's not even going to acknowledge the positive because it's like, oh, of course, accept that. Like expect that. Yeah.
Yeah. You've mentioned confidence a couple times. You're writing the John Schram Dictionary of Golf Terms. What would your entry for confidence be? How would you define confidence?
I would define confidence in a proper understanding of how difficult a certain task is and did I do my best? Okay. And that kind of feels more lateral to probably a definition of confidence, but
Sure.
I think if you are able to tell yourself, okay, feel like this is the right shot, have confidence with this shot, I played the right shot, okay, evaluate that as a win, move on. If you do all those, you have
Mhm.
all those steps, and the shot didn't come out and your system is affected by it, that to me is not something that can build confidence. I think great confidence, in my opinion, borders on delusion,
Mm,
right? I think flow, I think peak performance kind of lies where confidence meets delusion, at least meets delusion.
yeah.
It's something that you kind of have to be delusional about picking up pickleball and thinking that you're going to be good at pickleball or any other skill. I don't know why I said pickleball because that's kind of an easier game.
Mm,
But we all had to be delusional about our golf ability as a young age if you did start as a kid. I think if you're picking up the game when you're 50 or 60, you kind of have to be delusional about getting this ball in the air, right? And I think each step of the way, you're going to be delusional in trying to find that next step of progression for you. If you do get to scratch, all you're seeing is the three guys at the club that are plus that can beat you, right? There tends to not be evaluation of the 99.9% of the golf population behind you at this point.
mm. I like that your kind of delusion. I like your term delusion. I've never heard it termed that way, but the kind of the always looking ahead. There's, I know you've mentioned in your Substack the nine elements of flow, whatever that term elements,
Uh-huh.
factors of flow, but I believe one of them, without having read the list recently, is the the challenge scale balance, but the challenge is like just beyond your ability, or it's like it's more difficult enough to pull you, but
Uh-huh.
also not so difficult that you're demoralized. So that that confidence, that kind of delusion, we'll say, is okay. Those guys that are ahead of me, they're better than me, but I'm going to catch them, and I believe in my ability to do that. That is, I mean, there's like, there's no real evidence to say you're gonna do that, right? That's you trying to predict the future, but that's a form of flow to say I'm going to I'm going to do it. Like I'm going to put in a good process and I'm going to do it. And yeah, there's a little bit of delusion there. So, um, is is it helpful to I guess let's go to like goal setting. Like, is it? I mean, how do you think about goals? Should we set like a results goal? So as we're recording this, it's the end of April. So a lot of people are kind of launching into their golf season here in the States. So, I've got goals. Like I want to qualify for this. I want to make it to this. I want to do well in this. And these are results goals. And other people, I want to make the club championship this year, whatever, whatever. So are those sort of things good? Do you like that kind of, I want to set this goal and this is my planting the flag. Do you like that?
For inspiration purposes, absolutely.
Okay.
Right. We have to be able to sit down at home in your living room and kind of ponder what you want in this game
Hmm.
or what you hope for in this game. When it comes down to goal orientation or more or less how you pursue goals, I always try to say, okay, I feel like there's two perspectives. One is this mountain range, right? And there might be, let's just say there's 12 mountains out there. And since you've gone deep in the mid-am, there's many different, flags of goals for you that are pretty intense, right? I think maybe
Mm-hmm.
first flag is getting into US Mid-Am this year,
Mm-hmm.
contending for some sort of Carolinas Mid-Am, etc. Could be winning a Carolinas Mid-Am kind of event, right? Match play, and maybe even a little flag for each little match there. But
Sure.
the problem with the mountain analogy, or at least kind of that classical view of goal setting for me, is if we know that professionalism is relentless consistency, why are we setting up a system that has summit days, valley days, peak days,
Mm.
hard climbing days, really easy rest days? Why is it that, we are creating a system that always will have a very big day at the end of it as far as trying to achieve this? Now, if we took the perspective of more or less I have the ability to hit a tour quality shot at any moment, usually I'd say, okay, let's go over to the right, see this big 30, 40,000 foot ramp where our only goal is to take one more step up because I
Mm.
always tell guys that I work with, I don't care how you play. I really don't because today is going to provide a level of experience that you're going to be able to draw upon in the future. We just want to take one more step up that ramp. There's going to be steps that you're going to break an ankle. There's going to be steps where you feel like I'm flying, right? I always feel that it's way easier to be able to climb that ramp and kind of turn around and realize, oh man, I contended in like two or three USGA championships, or
Hmm.
man, I won two or three Carolinas mid-ams. Or there's no peak valley, there's no inconsistency, there's relentless consistency, right?
Mm.
So all that being said, if you know you're the clutch guy, you know you're the 10% kind of guy, or maybe 20% kind of guy, yeah, let's say, okay, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that,
Right.
and I expressly trading for that. Okay. And understanding that there's going to be a day that you're going to wake up where it's do or die. There's going to be a hole at some point during that round. It's going to be do or die. And if you know that you find that 15% extra, you find that 15% benefit because of that kind of thinking, go for it. But I would argue that the majority of the population doesn't live there because I would argue that the majority of the population doesn't understand they have an ability to hit a shot in the moment that is way better than what their +5 handicap says, or their 5 or their 20 handicap says.
Mm. Yeah, the mountain range it's kind of it's saying I am embracing the idea that there's going to be things that feel way more important and then there's things that feel much less important. So I have to be on the lookout for this system that I've created for myself, this mountain range goal system that I've created, I'm going to be anxious. Like it's going to I have to keep in mind this is going to spike my anxiety and then it's going to lead to some boredom, like super high dopamine and then dopamine crash.
Mhm.
And I look back at my own golf career and I see times when I have done that,
Mhm.
when the big goal um, in the future was what was driving me. Then when I was good enough, when I felt that was a great range session, I feel like I'm good enough now. I felt
Mhm.
awesome,
Yeah.
top of the mountain, as it
Yeah.
were. But then the next day, right, and we're 3 months away from the thing that I'm trying to get good enough for. The next day, I have a bad range session. I just don't feel it. Dopamine crash. Like, it's just so jagged, right? I
Mhm.
feel great sometimes. I feel lousy sometimes. Feel great sometimes. Feel lousy sometimes.
Mhm.
And it's, you know, I get into the trap of saying no one should try to be that way. That's not helpful for anybody. That's not consistent enough. There's no process there. It peaks and valleys are not helpful. There are some people that are that way,
Mhm.
and you probably know it about yourself if you are that way. But most people do better to see, okay, there are things I want to do in the future, sure, but it does not matter right now.
Mhm.
Right? I'm gonna have a good range session. I could have a bad range session. Kind of doesn't matter. I'm just putting in days of work that I believe in, and that worked for me.
Mhm.
Um, for the for the run of the mill amateur player, high handicap or mid handicap or whatever, who doesn't have a ton of time, who has the big goal, but the ramp to it is not
Mhm.
super clear. They don't have this regular process. I go practice 2 or 3 times a week and I always know what I'm working on. How can that person relate to their goal? Should they, kind of forget about it and say, if you make it, great. If you don't, look at your schedule. Of course, you couldn't. I don't know. How should they relate to big goals? People that kind of have an inconsistent process, don't get to have much of a process.
Mhm. I would I would say make them, visualize them, enjoy the fact that that creates motivation for you. That's great.
Yeah.
Hold it very loosely
Uh,
because and it's probably one of those cheesy quotes where it's like it's not the destination, it's the journey.
mm,
It kind of is. I really think it kind of is. I feel that if you're referring to like a mid-am that really wants to get into a USJ or a serious college player that really wants to go deep at the US Am, there's going to be years that, oh man, it's at Olympic. Holy cow, it's at Oakmont. Man, I really want to play Marion.
juice is flowing.
It's just it turns into clutch. It turns into close goal orientation. The way that I would illustrate it is I think Dr. Steve Yellen is probably one of the best illustrators of what we've done to invest into our ability in doing something. And we've already built the car. So in this illustration, maybe we've already built the self-driving car. Okay. If you're in that self-driving car and for some reason you just don't trust it, your hands will hit the wheel because there's stakes
Mm,
here.
yep.
But theoretically, I do believe, if it's a good autonomous driving car, it's probably a better driver than you are, right? So when I look at it that way, I do believe it's very similar with the swing. We've already built the swing. We have to trust that it's there without putting our hands on the wheel. Whenever there's conscious value that's added, we can go down this path to maybe even yips in the ultimate destination.
Mm,
But as it relates to getting back to goals, I think it's something to be looked at. I would say draw inspiration from what the goal is. Don't draw comparison to the goal. Don't judge yourself against the result. Judge yourself against the process that got you ready to perform.
mm,
Um, it's all about taking the value from what could be, but also being completely accepting of like, I'm going to have progress towards this, and I'm going to be very content in the progress, even if it's an 83 at US Open Locals.
mm,
You know,
mm-hmm.
it's it's something that we can see on tour, and this is probably the perfect illustration. We can see on tour that if you win 3.5% of the time, you will go to the Hall of Fame. Okay. I've several poker players. It's a little less. I think if you win a tournament every no, you'll win about 2 to 3% at most. Like Negreanu, the greats barely won over 3.5%,
Wow.
4%. So if that's the case, and we're showing up to qualifier, we're showing up to Caroline's Mid-Am or some sort of amateur tournament, and we're expecting a result that is in a third percentile, we're not quite understanding the the weight of what we're expecting,
Mm.
right? So I think with that perspective, I always try to just say, okay, well, I have the ability to win this if I do hit those tour quality shots in certain moments. And if that's the pursuit, I'm writing down every shot that I feel that I was fully present, had confidence in it, pre-shot cognition was good. Okay, chalk that up. That little tee shot on 3, I hit that. Okay, great. Little approach shot into 4, definitely had it. 5, I was battling some thoughts because there's something there. Obviously, put that in a bucket to improve. But I think at the end of the day, the people that are winning tournaments are much more process based and actually picking apart how they can find advantage and how they can more or less push their score as low as they possibly can. Because they're not thinking about the fact that, oh man, I need to shoot 12 under for these 3 rounds. They're thinking, well, I think I could shoot 30. If I didn't miss a shot, I could probably shoot 25
For
or 30. Like,
dreaming, might as well
you know,
dream.
yeah. I mean, in here, you have the ability to hit that tee shot. You have the ability to hit that approach shot. You have the ability to make that putt. Why wouldn't we think that way?
Mm.
But it's also kind of a sense of perfection. The Dream 54, Project 54 of like the theory that you could birdie every hole. I think what that does is it doesn't create expectation that you're going to birdie every hole, but it does kind of refresh your brain and saying like, okay, if you're 4 over through 14, we can still shoot even.
Yeah. Confidence and capability, right? Reminder of capability.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, reminder of real evidence, right? You're not faking it. You're not blowing smoke up your own butt. It's not false positivity. It's
Uh-huh.
real evidence of, I mean, I can, like, in any random situation, I can hit this shot great. I can make this putt. I've made this putt before.
Uh-huh.
So I'm reminding myself of reality. In one of your Substacks, you kind of gave a theoretical of what would you rather play Phil Mickelson for?
Uh-huh.
For $1 million, you're going to play him an entire round of golf for $1 million, or one 150-yard shot for $1 million.
Uh-huh.
And you said it's obvious, the one shot, right? Anyone can hit one good shot, and
Uh-huh.
Phil can hit one bad shot.
Yeah.
There's $1 million. Chances are you're not going to beat Phil across an entire 18
Yeah.
holes.
Yeah.
Insert pro golfer. You're just not going to do it.
Yeah. I used to love that illustration until I had one seriously good D1 player say, "No, I want him for 18." I'm like, okay, that defeats the I just kind of like stopped the
That's
call. I'm like,
delusion. Yeah.
"Hey, I understand, man. He's kind of struggling in certain
He's washed
contexts
up
this
now.
season and yeah, it's like, okay, well, I like that confidence." But
Yeah.
it does break it down because we have a rare opportunity to play with this. Because if we're talking tennis, we're talking soccer, we're talking basketball, there's not a lot of this play that we have, right? And I think that's why the school let me do a study that was so closely tied to golf because the nature of peak experience is somewhat fluid and usually only lasting 15 to 20 minutes or maybe an hour at most.
Mm.
Productivity is great for executives, et cetera, et cetera. But usually if you're, let's just say if you're a coder for Zuckerberg, they knew about this way back then, but you're locked in. I don't know if you've seen the movie, but they
Mm-hmm.
basically it was just like they had a policy. If you're in, you're not to be touched. You're not to
Yep.
be disturbed. You're not to whatever. But with flow, we have to somehow find it by waking up every 8 minutes and just like, okay, wow, what was his name again? And like, you have all these things you can think
Yes.
about for, you can do it 70 times.
Mm. Yeah. Golf is especially tough to. Um, and maybe it's not tough to stay in flow if flow happens 10 minutes at a time.
Mm,
In a tennis match, 10 minutes is a bunch of
mm,
tennis, right? In golf, 10 minutes is one golf shot.
mm,
So or two, maybe. And you might get 4 holes of,
mm,
man, I was locked in. I was in flow. No one could touch me. Everything, like the club just felt like it was part of me for those
Uh-huh.
4 holes. But that's just 4 holes, right? There's 14 more that you have to kind of deal with, um, being overly self conscious about how you feel. What's my thought process? What's my pre shot cognition? I need to kind of consciously give myself a pre shot cognition instead of it just comes to me, right? I don't even have to think about it. I'm
Yep.
just throwing the red rubber ball
Yep.
and I don't have to think about it at all. But so much of golf is, I have to be pretty conscious about this. I
Uh-huh.
have to put things in place. I have to add in reminders.
Uh-huh.
So, with that being said, we've kind of brushed up against it a couple times, but I've been asking a lot of people this recently. The idea of, okay, what should actually consciously be on our brain
Uh-huh.
when we are over the ball,
Uh-huh.
about to pull the trigger?
Uh-huh.
Is it target? Is it
Uh-huh.
swing thought? Is it a combination of both? Is it nothing? Should we aspire to be no mind?
Uh-huh.
What do you think there?
So entirely based on the individual,
Of course.
I always like to ask, okay, what is the context of your very best round and give me as much detail as you possibly can.
Yeah.
It isn't always the same thing, right? It could always be very different. Um, the literature often says external focus. Okay. So
Hmm.
that can be something. I think with golf, some confirming feel of, okay, on the range, my 8 iron, if I realize that I've got this one position on my shoulder, once I feel that position, just go. I'm okay with one thought, one feel. I think ultimately it is a band-aid a little bit, but it's entirely accepting. Once we get into two or three shot thoughts, we're really starting to mess with it.
Mm.
So what I believe is the ideal route, I'll just answer it by giving a little bit of a tip on practice. I think it's very helpful. Take a little milk carton, take your shag bag, take a head cover, and throw it out and make sure it's 20 on the dot, like 20 yards. To hit pitch shots, only focusing on the head cover. And I don't care about whatever swing thought or thing that you're working on fundamentally, as far as, okay, 60-40, front left foot or front foot, try to rotate through, whatever it is. Just take some time and try to hit some shots at that head cover as if you're tossing a basketball into a hoop or kicking a soccer ball into a goal or throwing a red ball at somebody, just kind of tossing it to them. I think external focus really allows the prefrontal shutdown. That is what flow is. That is what zone is. If you're playing your very, very, very best, oftentimes you're a little bit tighter, but you trust it enough to say, okay, that part of my brain, the rational decision-making side of my brain can just shut down, right?
Mm.
So if that's difficult, and I will guarantee you, like, just to give you an understanding, I'm a plus few,
Hmm.
right? When I really try that for the first time and it's been a while, I will blade it, I will chunk it, I will because I'm giving complete trust in my body to say, I've done this 1,000 times, just do it, right? Just do it,
Mm.
just do it. So if that's difficult or that's too difficult, I would suggest throwing a tee down at 3 feet, lining up a completely straight foot, just straight 3 foot putt. And the intention or the focus, the only thing that we're thinking about is that one little blade of grass. And even better, take a little highlighter or maybe a chalk pencil or something, just highlight one blade of grass. It's kind of tough to do because it's so small,
Mm.
right? Once you're over the ball, we are just putting to that one single blade of grass. And that is it. There is no conscious on the shoulders. There's no left hand lead or right hand lead, or there's no focus on anything but that. And frankly, for at least for me and a few people I've worked with, I feel that that needs to be 40 to 50% of your practice. Where, okay,
Agreed.
fundamentals, we understand what our fundamentals are doing, we understand what our swing's doing. We can't really call upon that when the pressure's on, right? That is just kind of garbage that we're still trying to figure out. On the range, it might work, but under pressure, it's just you can't have a swing thought or two swing thoughts or doubt or anything. Your best golf is going to lie when you're able to just kind of see a target and just send it and just be accepting of what happens.
Yeah, it's the kind of trying versus letting happen,
Mm,
right? I'm
yeah.
trying to make a swing happen versus I'm letting my body make a swing happen. I mean, when you jump in the deep end of the pool, you're going to stay afloat, right? You're going to, right? That's just what you have to do. So you just do it. You're not saying I have to do this with my arms. And so it's almost like and I agree completely with the 50%, just cut it right in half. 50% of your practice should be switch is flipped off, right? I am just hitting golf shots. I'm
Mm,
going to give over control from my thinking brain and
mm,
just let it happen.
mm,
So as you're playing and things are not going well, and you've hit 3, 4 quick hooks in a row,
mm,
there's a strong tendency to start, you bring in the prefrontal cortex to say, what is going on?
mm.
What's broken here? I need to fix it. So in those moments where it's really hard to let go, should you let go, or is it important to say, for a second, I'm going to engage the conscious mind and consciously come up with something to band-aid this for a little bit, get it back on the rails? Or
Yeah.
should you say, no, you have the ability.
Yeah.
You've hit 4 bad shots. It's okay. You
Yeah.
those could happen anytime. They just happen to happen in a row, but you're capable. You can do it. You're always capable of hitting a good shot. So just let it happen. Keep letting it happen. Keep showing up.
Yeah.
What should you do there?
Yeah. So I'd go in two directions. I definitely recommend both.
Mm,
The one, the one that's a little bit more practical is if you really care about this and you're really serious about this, get some time on some TrackMan and understand what your ball flight actually looks like when those numbers happen. So
yeah.
I feel that a lot of 20 to 5, even a lot of scratch, to be honest, when they see a ball flight, they don't know actually what happened,
Yeah.
right?
Same. I'm a plus and I don't all
Yeah.
the time.
And so the general rule, right, where the ball started is where that face was an impact, and if the ball moves, it's the difference between the face and the path, right?
Right.
So yeah, if I'm starting something 10 or 15 paces right, and it's just on a line, it's dead, it does not move, I'm realizing, okay, I'm coming from the inside, my face was
Mm,
open. Great. Okay. Now, obviously this is kind of prefrontal. This is trying to figure it out and everything,
yeah.
but I I fully believe that we need to acknowledge what we've just done. Acknowledge, okay, what did that feel like? Okay, that is the result. And I understand what my face was doing, what my path did. Okay. Standing on the next tee. What what I would do, and more or less it's kind of less practical, but everybody can kind of get there in their own way, is okay, have we hit a good tee shot today? Or have we hit a good tee shot on the range today? I I'm a big believer of just getting over the ball and just almost feeling as if I'm on that first tee where I did hit that nice little tight draw, or I'm at the range and feeling what I felt then. And specifically for me, if it's impact, if it's how you feel when you're, rotating through it, whatever is of importance to you. But for me, I visualize what it felt like at impact on the range or on that first tee where I did hit what I wanted, right? Um, I forget who it was, but it was one of those legends way back in the day. It may have been Hagen, I think, or Hogan. Not really sure. But he often said that he budgeted 4 bad swings per round. I mean,
Yeah, that sounds like
this
Hogan.
is a,
Mm.
a multi major winner that was probably one of the best ball strikers ever. And he's like, hey guys, I mess up 4 times around. So
Mm,
what's your number? Like for me, I feel that if I'm playing well and I've been working at it, I budget in 5 to 8 of like, well, that was ugly. There's one, right?
mm,
So I think in the context of being out in a tournament that you care about, that's the challenge. And that's just the next step up that ramp for you because everybody's going to have those nervy, holy cow. And I mean, full transparency. I started off the Carolinas mid-am. First tee shot, I hit one 40 yards right of my intended line. And then second tee shot, I hit 60 yards left of my intended line.
oh,
So, that's another step. I'm standing on the third tee and it's a tight little tee shot. I'm like, okay, this is just another step. I can't feel it.
mm,
And I'm just going to really dial in on where I intend for this to feel. Where I, the feel that generates the intention, right?
Mm.
So yeah, practically speaking, understanding what face and path does to your flight, and then just take yourself to that last time where you executed. Because if you're trying to add that cognitive value of like, I gotta hold it on or I gotta whatever, that's where we can really open up the ball game of like that thing can go anywhere,
Right.
right? So you have the feeling you've already done it, and we have proof that day. Generally, just call upon it.
Mm. Yeah, those days where there's a literal football field between left and right. Those are the challenging ones, and those are the ones that kind of show what you're made of. So those are where those are kind of the expect the best but prepare for the worst, right? Prepare for when those happen.
Uh-huh.
We all want the good one. We all want the I'm gonna be in flow this entire time. I'm gonna be locked in. My swing thought's gonna be dialed.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna just be letting it happen all day. Well,
Uh-huh.
that's a cool expectation, and that could happen on any given shot or any given hole. But most likely, realistically, golf is hard. Being human is hard.
Uh-huh.
Things are imperfect. You will encounter those. So what are you gonna do? Like come up with an actual kind of contingency plan, right?
Sure.
A uh, what will I do when this goes south?
Uh-huh.
And that's just as important as how am I going to do really well, right?
Uh-huh.
What am I going to do really well? Okay, what am I going to do when it doesn't go really well, right?
Uh-huh.
Planning for both. So that's vital. So for the listener, John, we've been talking exclusively golf, but John does non-golf stuff, right, all the time. Uh, he was talking about other kind of sports or I don't know, is poker a sport? It's a sport.
I don't know, and I always avoid it because
Yeah,
like
we just it's poker. It's
I
just
don't want
poker.
to piss somebody off. So
Yeah,
just like
right. Sure.
yeah.
So, and people will say golf is not a sport. Some people will say that. So, John also specializes in business stuff, right? And he has specifically helped me with my business and, channeling where I want to go and how do I get there. And all the same stuff applies, right? Stuff like flow, clutch, process, the mountain range. He's literally talked about the mountain range versus the ramp for business. And all of that has been extremely helpful to me. So, John, not everyone listening to this probably no one plays for money, right? We all do something for money, and then we also play golf. So most of our life is taken up by the thing we do for money.
Mhm.
So for those people, for all of us, how would you say flow applies to business, work, things we do on a daily basis, 9 to 5? Where does flow come in to factor for that?
Yeah, so I always thought I would just get into sports psychology. I started my PhD in 2020, and there's a couple really interesting studies that came out that were kind of partnered with some of the consulting firms, and I think it's BCG, Deloitte. They really started writing about, okay, what is peak experience and what is peak performance, and how does that relate to what we do, right? And all these industries are very, very, very competitive, so they understand that their talent base needs something. We need to, press them forward, understand that we can get more out of them, but also we can help them grow and, more or less find meaning in what they're doing and what they're pursuing. So they found that more or less it's about a five-fold increase in productivity when the flow is with you, right?
Mm,
So, whoever's listening to this, I'd ask you to visualize a state or a time of day. It could be relatively consistent. There might be a task that you have. It might be a sales call. It might be some sort of, you know, re something that you are repeating over and over and over again. You don't realize that the skill that you have in this is something that is bore out of, decades of hard work, and not everybody can do this, right? We sometimes kind of undervalue what we can do and just kind of expect so much more. But what flow state does is it creates a heightened sense of productivity. It creates a pretty massive dopamine dump. It was initially kind of first observed by a psychologist back in the 70s, Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, and he was painting. He painted for 8 hours, and then he just realized, I'm not thirsty. I'm not hungry. I was locked in. How is it 8 hours later? Being a psychologist, he's like, okay, I gotta discover this, right? I gotta get into this. And it started in ballet dancing, chess, etc. But as we sit today, at least in the business context, there are tasks that you sit down to that you can fall into this state and find it. So it to me, there's a large dopamine reward that we get. We can get addicted to a process that could be working for us. Not only that, but we're able to do much more. So I help clients understand what that looks like for them in their unique context and their unique industry, and more or less how they can build processes that are going to get there. And it's not just productivity, it's not just sitting at the computer or doing whatever tasks that you have to do. It has to do with communication, it has to do with sales, it has to do with engagement. I would say public speaking is probably one of the prime examples of what flow can be, right? If you're trying to be very conscious with what you're saying, it might not roll as well as you possibly, or as well as you're hoping it might.
Yeah. Yeah, and what John has helped me with is he asked me, "Okay, what of all the tasks that I do, because I'm a business owner and I wear 18 different hats. So what of all of that puts you into that flow channel, right? You're not bored while you're doing it, but you're not like super anxious either.
Mhm.
What gets you up towards anxious but not anxious, right? You're not like watching every second hit the clock, but you're also not frantic.
Mm.
And actually, what I've come up with is interviewing guests like John for this podcast, interviewing guests that I've had that you've heard, 150 other guests that I've had. That is, and preparing for those. Like that's kind of hits my sweet spot of all the hats that I wear.
Mm.
I mean, when I'm wearing my golf hat, that gets my juices flowing. Like that's flow channel for me, of course. But as far as business goes,
Yeah.
John has helped me. Like I never thought about it that way. So I, because of that, I have leaned into doing that more because I know that's when I'm doing my best work, in my opinion. I don't know what other people think about what I do, but John has helped me realize that. So John has been instrumental in the short amount of time that we've known each other. In our 5 or 6 conversations has been really awesome. So, John, I want to thank you for your time. Where would you send people? What would you make them aware of that you do? What do you want to show off to people?
Yeah, praxisperf.com, praxisperf.com. What I like to do is I want to show off what this is. I do a 30-minute discovery call and then I offer a free hour, more or less. So free hour and a half to kind of show off what this is and what it could be for your process. And then in golf terms, I've got a little Substack there that challenge myself to write about, what I love. So those are the two things currently.
And I can attest. John has been gracious to me. He's given me a lot of his time. So I can fully attest to John's value. And yeah, so John, thank you. This has been a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.